Hi, it's Kane Dalton from BikeSocial. We're here in Morocco with Bridgestone on the launch of the sports touring T31 and also the adventure Tyre A41. I'm standing here with Fabian Florence, who's head of product engineering from Bridgestone. In terms of the launch that we've been on, I mean, the last couple of days we've ridden a couple of 100 miles yesterday, which was mostly on the road, all sorts of conditions. We had hugely strong winds blowing us yesterday. In some instances we had the front wheel nearly washing out.
Yeah, exactly.
Sand. We had really quite tricky conditions running various different sorts of bikes. I mean, what would you say the strongest point is on this T31 in these sorts of conditions?
Well, that the tire is always giving confidence, even in the most tricky conditions like you had yesterday. I think you felt it also yourself, that the confidence level that the T31 is generating, it's at a very high level. Whatever the condition, tricky ones, for us also not windy, but also wet and low temperatures. Those are the aims of the development of T31, and this is what we are pushing for.
Well, I mean, yesterday was quite interesting for me, just purely from a confidence point of view, like you said, because we were riding various bikes. So again, as soon as you get on a new bike you haven't ridden before, you're not quite sure if it's the tire that's performing well or the bike is performing well. And when you're riding in conditions where you're sort of turning into the wind and the front wheel's nearly washing out underneath you, you have to put a lot of confidence in the tire. And I must say that it took, after a while, it took my thoughts away from actually wondering whether it was going to have the grip or not, because it was there, and that was quite amazing. I mean, obviously we haven't ridden in the wet, but I think you mentioned something about the stopping distances in the wet quite considerably less.
Yes.
With the new tire.
Yeah, we have a small brake distance, but what you need to really see on T31 compared to its predecessor is the wet overall performance. So it's grip, braking distance, and the limit behavior.
Yeah.
So that's all the three key points areas where the T31 is performing really better compared to its predecessor.
Yeah. So I mean, I know you're saying like in the sports touring segment and the adventure segment to a certain degree, it's quite complicated, this section. I mean, I know from high performance sport tires, you know, they're designed for one purpose, and mostly in certain conditions you're either running a dry tire or a wet tire.
Yeah.
So what is the key differences in terms of, you know, what are the problems that you encounter developing a sports touring tire for a big bike like this?
Yeah, well, imagine that when we are talking about the T31, well, we have to fulfill the performance levels from light naked bikes with 60 horsepower, weighing 160 kilograms, to 160 plus horsepower bikes. And in between we have those heavy bikes, heavy touring bikes, and we have to fulfill all the performances with one tire. So that was quite difficult, I have to say.
Yeah.
But a lot of research and development has been done to make this T31 at the level that we wanted to get.
Well, I mean, you know, you've got the Africa Twin here, which is a relatively light bike, and I rode this bike today, and I was fairly comfortable and fairly confident on it. I then rode a much bigger, heavier GS 1200, and initially when I got on the bike, the dimensions of it are really quite huge, and I felt super confident on both. Which was very interesting. I mean, obviously yesterday we were on the road most of the time. Today we started off on a section which was almost desert-like in places. There were rocks, there was some quite tricky conditions off-road, which again was very interesting. So I mean, what I found is, because the bikes are bigger and heavier than I'm used to off-road, slowing them down was quite interesting, because, you know, everyone was sort of turning the traction control off and everything else, so that you can actually sort of get the bike moving around. So I found actually slowing down, I had to think about it a little bit more, but all of a sudden you're riding along, you're looking down at the speedo and you're doing 160 kilometers an hour on the sand, and it almost sort of sucks you into a bit of a false sense of security, because you're doing this sort of speed, you're looking down, you feel quite comfortable, and then you hit some rocks.
Exactly.
And then you think, okay, hang on, I'm off-road on a big heavy bike on a tire that really is
not the first purpose of it.
No,
indeed.
So I mean, I think you're saying it's something like it's like 90% road and 10% off-road, right?
Yeah, the Battlax Adventure A41 is a 90-10 approach. It's a trail on-road tire for trail on-road bikes.
Okay.
So that's how we see it, and this is the segment where we work in. So also there, it's quite complex, because now today every manufacturer is coming on the market with big maxi trails, but they all have their own specifications. So today Bridgestone is coming with a full lineup approach for this with the A41. So we have the H-rated tires with tubes, we have the V-rated standard A41 tires, but also the special W-rated tires, also 18-inch. All those things together, it was a big development for us.
For those that don't really know what that means, right?
Yeah.
So in layman's terms, if you have a T31 and you have the A41 and you have a big adventure bike,
yeah.
the tires kind of look kind of similar.
In terms of approach and concept, yes.
What's the core difference? I mean, why would I choose one over the other?
Well, I would say on a big maxi trail, the A41 has been really developed for it. So that's one point that I would push forward.
Yep.
Secondly, the adventure tire, trail on-road tire, has a completely different construction, different compounding than T31, with the high-speed stability in mind for this big maxi trail on-road bikes, because
yeah.
that's the most crucial part where safety is put as first position. Because those maxi trails, what is happening, they have most of the time luggage heavy loaded on the rear, and we have a high front end wheel, 21-inch, 19-inch, and so on, with a high front end.
I felt that in the wind yesterday quite a lot.
Exactly. So what is really crucial with those kind of bike is to have that high-speed stability. And the A41 has been completely developed on this kind of bikes. The sport touring tire has been developed in the whole sport touring category. So we have indeed the size for the maxi trails also in T31, but this is not something that I would push forward. I would certainly go for the A41 in terms of performance, but also in terms of safety.
So the A41 runs a different compound, so it's
yes.
a dual compound, right?
Yes, for some sizes, of course, we have the dual compound approach front and dual compound approach rear.
And what difference does that make versus a single compound on the front?
Well, here, in terms of why we use the dual compound front, it was to reach the right deformation and the right feedback capacities that we could not reach with a single compound on the front on the adventure tire
yeah.
this time. On the T31, we could do it with this new molecular approach and so on.
Okay.
But on the A41, we had to adapt it because the revised casing was not matching with this kind of compound from the full T31 approach. So on the A41, we worked with a dual compound approach to have the right deformation and the right feedback, certainly on cornering.
Yeah. I mean, today for me it was very interesting because you had the long off-road section, which had a bit of everything. I mean, there was deep sand, there were stones, there was uphill, there were downhill. We were going on some sections from sand onto tarmac, then back onto sand again. There were some sections we were riding a little bit on the tarmac and then coming all of a sudden onto
back
sand
on
again.
Yep.
And you had to have your wits about you a little bit because of the changing conditions. And usually, I mean, on a sports bike, I'd see gravel and my heart would stop. So, today there were sections where, you're riding the gravel, and when you're in the gravel, you have a sort of slightly different mindset. Yeah. And then when I was on the tar, I mean, on the roads here, I mean, there was some beautiful tarmac, but there were also sections where you're sort of turning in on the apex of
yes,
the corner,
it was full
there's
of gravel.
nothing,
yeah.
right?
Or,
so you go tarmac and then nothing. So you're kind of turning it in, you see nothing, you think, what's going to happen? But very, very quickly, I found today on the tires that I just tracked over that with ease, yes. with absolute ease. Yeah. And there were parts of the roads where we were riding the sort of tight switchback sections, and the kind of pace that we were running at today, I probably wouldn't want to run any faster than that on anything, whether it be this sort of a bike or a sporting bike. Yeah. And the level of grip was actually quite confidence inspiring, as yeah. you said. I expected it to slide. So there were sections where I was riding supermoto style.
Yes.
I had the foot out. I was like pushing the elbow down, and I was going, right, I'm okay here. And then after a little while, I was thinking, actually,
it was not needed.
It was okay, because then I slowly brought the foot back in on the peg, and it still wasn't sliding out. And I thought, well, this is okay. Maybe I'll start leaning a little bit
yes.
now. And then as I started doing more and more of that, I got more and more confidence with it.
Yeah.
And you could just flick it from side to side, super easy. And even on the big heavy bikes, it was just so easy to put it from one side of the bike to the other in gravelly conditions, which
yeah.
I think is a great testament to the
exactly.
tire.
When you compared A41, this is exactly what I present in the technical presentation at this launch, is that A41 compared to its predecessor, we didn't work in one area of development to make it in one area much better.
Yeah.
No, A41, when you compare it to its predecessor, it's an improvement in all performances areas and without sacrificing mileage from the predecessor.
So I saw you out there on the road today, right? So if you could name 3 things that makes this an outstanding tire, what would the top 3 things be for you?
Confidence,
Yep.
mileage, and total grip.
Awesome. Well, Fabian, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.